just like to be a great representative of UNI in turn.
Alright, so my 3 things, similar to Jay, I guess. Obviously, I wanted to continue to create a better transparency with Northern Iowa student government and with the rest of our student body here at UNI. My second thing that I would like to do is help establish with student organizations, become a student organization, help them with that process afterwards, and help them make UNI, or excuse me, Northern Iowa student government a one-stop shop. And I feel like we can accomplish that within as being a senator. And then my third point, I would just like to continue our representation, our presence, not only here at UNI, but also in the community of Seattle.
And then we'll do some predetermined questions, and then we'll go to questions from the audience and closing statements. So first we will do the opening statement, and we will decide who goes first by heads or tails. So what do you guys pick? Tails? Okay. Make sure I don't like throw this one. Oh, no. Okay, it is tails. We'll start. Kevin and Paul. So you will start. You have 3 minutes for your opening statement, and you can start now.
Thank you to those of you who showed up this evening. We appreciate you all taking an active and concerted stance on the future of student government. That is why we're here, to discuss the future of where we're headed as a university. Paul and I love how we've been able to involve ourselves in our years on campus, and we want every student to feel comfortable and have the same opportunities to lead. I've had the opportunity to be a leader in various ways on campus, from my previous RA experience, serving as current Fraternity Council President, and serving as an ambassador for the university and SAA, as well as executive board experience in Sigma Pi Epsilon. Outside of the NISG, the tone amongst many student organizations is that is pretty consistent. That either people think NISG isn't doing enough for the students, or on most hands, that they don't know what NISG is doing and aren't. They have no idea that NISG can be a resource for students. Strengthening relationships with these students and their leaders on campus is an ongoing process, but we will not begin it blindly. By selecting individuals across campus who have proven themselves as successful leaders, both within and outside of Northern Iowa student government, we will be able to identify strategic ways to implement our policies successfully. And by doing that, students will know what we're doing, how we plan to do it. And in that regard, we will be able to maintain the support of the student body throughout this process. Over the past week or so, our platform has become synonymous with the phrase, your experience, your UNI. Through this forum, we hope that you, students, will be informed about our initiatives for your experience through improving the way the student services fee is communicated, utilized, identifying opportunities to create and improve new efforts in campus safety, and establishing a one-stop shop for student organizations. We also want to address your UNI and our plans to create active communication with the student body, maintain and expand UNI's image, and highlight diversity through education and inclusion, and lastly, but certainly not least, reinforcing purple pride throughout campus. We know that with over 12,000 students on campus, we all aren't going to agree on everything. Except on days like today, we'll take the weather like this. But, in all seriousness, what we do know is with the 12,000 plus individuals on campus, we have some of the brightest and most creative individuals around us, which is why it doesn't make any sense that we aren't trying to reach out to them to figure out what they want, what they think. We need to stop saying and thinking that the ordinary student can't accomplish something. Take a step back and listen to what they have to say, because we may just be surprised as to what we hear. Thank you.
Well, I guess first off, I'd like to thank Kaylee, the election commissioner, for bringing this event together this evening. I know that last year's election commission was kind of stressful on the day after the flags were launched and all that stuff, so I think that we should all give them a hand for setting up the event tonight. I'd also like to thank Kevin and Paul for coming tonight. We know we started a little bit late, but we're glad they're running. Eric and I are committed to this race, and we're hoping that tonight we can demonstrate our experience as leaders, what we've done inside and outside of NISG. It makes us the best candidates for the university president and vice president.
We'd also like to thank our campaign team that has put so much work before the campaign season started. Together, we worked really hard to get a putting ideas together for a platform, and we think it really reflects the ideas and goals that we will be working on from day one.
In our time here at UNI, we've spent most of this time helping and supporting students and student interests. With 7 years of combined experience between us, we've proven our dedication to students. As your student body president and vice president, we know that we will continue serving UNI. As a student leader outside of NISG, I understand the challenges of running student organizations. As an officer of One Iowa, UNI, and LGBT political advocacy and ally group, as vice president of the philosophy club, I've guided students involved on campus, making them feel like part of the campus community, and work to enact change within the university.
I've been a leader in residence life as well as NISG. I served as the president of Ryder Hall last year and an active member within the Residence Hall Association. I'm currently an RA in Shoal, where I sit on the Inclusive Communities team, worked on putting together a professor lecture series, and I'm currently a member of the Organization and Finance Committee as a senator for the College of Social and Behavioral Sciences in NISG. We know that the summer is a critical time for laying the foundation of success for the school year. We'll be here over the summer working with our cabinet directors and an orientation to make NISG a resource for students.
Eric and I have also spent time in Des Moines lobbying for UNI, and we will continue to promote UNI not only just in the Sioux Falls of Des Moines, but throughout the state. My time as senator, and now my time as the at-large member of the Student Services Committee, I understand UNI's financial situation, not approving the state's support for This next year is a critical time for UNI students. Both as an election year where we have our voices heard, and we also need to have our voices heard as students with the new administration and continue to build ties with the current administration.
We've been talking to students before and during the campaign, and we know how we can go to work for them. NISG is by and for the students, and as your student body president and vice president, we will keep it that way.
Thank you, all right, so we have a set of 5 predetermined questions. Each ticket will have 2 minutes to answer these questions, and we will rotate between both tickets on who answers first. So we will start with Eric and Corey on the first question. The question is, what is the first thing you will do upon entering into office?
Well, we understand that the transition period before the end of the year is a really critical time. And the first thing is that we want to get addressed right away in April, is that we want to hit the ground running and start putting together a cabinet for next year. We recognize that the job is larger than both of us, and we understand how critical it is to have really good directors in those positions. In fact, what we want to do on the first day is we want to lobby with the NISG Senate for more funding than the contingency fund for NISG. What we want to do is we want to institute a director of technology in our cabinet because we think it's really important going forward for students to have a technology advocate in stand-up.
Wonderful, thank you. And if the next ticket can answer, the question is, what is the first thing you will do upon entering into office?
The first thing that we want to do is really sit down with Tom and Blake and determine where they're at the end of their time. We want to make sure that we continue their efforts and everything that they've been doing. We also want to select an executive cabinet of individuals that have NISG experience. We are going to fill our cabinet with experienced members so that we know that we're getting viewpoints from all across campus. And then we're going to really build relationships with administration, staff, and students to make sure that we start off doing everything that we need to for the campus of UNI.
Wonderful, all right. And for the next question, we will start with Kevin and Paul. Which of your platform planks will be the most difficult to accomplish?
One of our big platforms deals with the current situation that Tom and Blake are working with the busing situation. I think that's going to be our most difficult to accomplish just because it's very difficult for them to accomplish as well. So we want to continue with what they've been doing with their efforts. We'd like to create a 9 o'clock bus route so that way students who have night classes or have meetings on campus have that sort of opportunity to get home. That's something we do feel really passionate about. However, with the funding opportunities or lack thereof, that could be our most difficult spot.
All right, and Corey and Eric, which of your platform planks will be the most difficult to accomplish?
Well, our platform, as you can read it, one of the emphasis of that in this upcoming election year is getting students involved on campus. We want to set goals this year to have a lot of students vote on campus. We recognize it's really difficult to get students informed in the political process and participate in that process. So when it comes to things that are really hard to do, I mean, that's probably the hardest thing to do. I mean, that's a $1 million question. So what we're committed to do is starting on day one, we want to lay the groundwork so that way by November, students know they can vote from the community, they can vote absentee, and they can vote early.
All right, thank you. And now we will start with Eric and Corey. Please list 2 specific attributes of your ticket that makes you the most qualified candidate to serve as the next student body president and vice president.
Well, for the first ticket, or the first attribute, I would say experience in and out of NISG. In NISG, we've both been senators. Corey has been election commissioner. I've been on the organization finance committee, currently am, and Corey is currently on the student service fee. And outside of NISG, Corey has been a major leader within One Iowa UNI, within the philosophy club, and myself, I have helped students as an RA in Shoal Hall, and as Ryder Hall president, and in the Residence Hall Association. And I think a second attribute that will help us succeed is getting input from different organizations on campus. As we've been meeting with different student orgs, we've been making it a highlight to ask what they would like to see within NISG, what they think some of the faults are. And as student body president and vice president, we would work with those student organizations to figure out how we could improve as in student body.
And Kevin and Paul, please list 2 specific attributes of your ticket that makes you the most qualified candidate to serve as the next student body president and vice president.
Our first big one is leadership. We believe strongly in the fact that we are current leaders. And talking with the current administration as well as 4 of the past 5 student body presidents, one of the big things that they said around the board is that you're not going to know what exactly is required of you going into office. You might think that you're prepared with whatever experiences you might have had, but when it comes down to it, 90% of what you learn is going to be from day one. So regardless of what sort of experiences you have there, you won't be as prepared as you think you are. So our leadership skills are really transcendent. Right now, as Interfraternity Council President, I head up an executive board of 6 members, which oversees 4 student organizations, which works directly with 4 more organizations. So I have that sort of leadership and time management skills there, as I have about 15 to 20 meetings a week. And our second one is diligence. I think that can be seen right now with where we are in our campaign. Quite honestly, 24 hours, or excuse me, like a full week ago, right at this point, we weren't in the election. And so to see where we've come and how we've gotten where we are and how dedicated we are, I think that's a testament to our diligence and how we're going to work in office. And our big thing that we're currently working on in order to inform ourselves and shows our diligence is that we're meeting with each of the cabinet positions before the election, so that way we know what each of them does.
All right, and for the next question, we will start with Kevin and Paul. What are your thoughts on the proposed tuition freeze for a 2nd year in a row, and how do you think the freeze will impact UNI specifically?
Kevin and I are in agreement with the tuition freeze. I think it's very important that we keep the cost of tuition down for students coming here. In our involvement in SAA, we get to interact with potential students, and that's something that's very important when they're thinking about their college decision. And we're very close to other institutions here in Iowa, so we want to make sure that we don't have tuition costs be a reason that someone doesn't attend UNI. So we would be in agreement with the tuition freeze, and I think that we can find ways to fund other things and not raise student service fees or anything like that, but keep the tuition at where it's at and not raise any of the fees on campus as well.
And Corey and Eric, what are your thoughts on the proposed tuition freeze for a 2nd year in a row, and how do you think the freeze will impact UNI specifically?
Lynn, thank you for that question. It's actually a really good question. It's a critical question for you and I in our community here. You know, every year in Senate, we have different proposals about, like, should we support a tuition freeze but make it conditional on additional funding? Should we support a tuition raise and look at that? We like play nice with the legislature, and then we'll get more money in return. When it comes to whether we're in support or not support of tuition freeze, the fact remains the same. We're paying too much in tuition and fees, and we need more support from the state. And that's the approach that we're going to take as an administration. Now, when it comes to the specific question of whether NISG should support a freeze or a raise in a given year, we have to recognize that we have to work with UNI's current people on staff in their lobbying efforts to get the money for UNI. And I think that it's critical for us to work in concert with them so that we can have our voices heard as loud as we can in the State House. It's hard, but we're hoping that we can lobby for more support from the state so that way UNI students will have to continue paying more out of pocket.
All right, and the next question we will start with Corey and Eric. How will you balance the oftentimes conflicting demands of students, faculty, and administration?
Well, I actually think that's an easy question. It's our job to support students. We're gonna back students up on everything that we can. It's our job to represent UNI, have a place at the table for students. But it's not our job to sort of kowtow to what administration thinks sounds like a good idea or what faculty thinks sounds good. We have to advocate for the student perspective. That's why we're at the table. It's hard to maintain that, but also we have to maintain good relations because they understand that we're trying to voice our voice for the students. So it's critical that we can have that voice, but we're also open to working and understanding their perspective.
Right. And Kevin and Paul, how will you balance the oftentimes conflicting demands of students, faculty, and administration?
I think this goes back to Kevin and I's past experience. Our experience on executive boards, we've had to listen to a lot of different sides and a lot of different arguments. Our main goal as student body president and vice president is to represent students and represent their voice. But we do have to take into opinion what the administration wants, what the faculty want. We do have the skills from our past experience to factor in, what is important, what the administration needs to be successful, what's important for students to be successful. We have those skills already now in place so that we can discern what we need to do in those situations.
Great. And now we will move on to questions from the audience and social media. So we will just grab those questions real quick. Questions from social media, but for those who are currently in the audience, if you want to ask a question, please start forming a line right over here and we'll get you to your question. And we will start with the first question, and we will start with Kevin and Paul. How do you plan to work with the new LGBT Center to improve UNI for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer students? And you also have, let's see, and you have 1 minute to answer.
Yeah, Kevin and I think that the addition of the LGBT Center on campus was a very, very big step for UNI's campus. We want to work with LGBT Center to see what's worked for them over the past year, what things have gone well for them, how NISG has helped them, and what we can do in this upcoming year to maybe remedy some of the things that didn't work out well for them. We'd also like to work with the admissions office. I know that they are currently working on a plan to send information to potential students that request it about the resources from the LGBT community. So we want to work with UNI Proud to make sure that we're representing them in that information and making sure that they're getting what they want to say across to the potential students. We also want to look into the option of potentially getting gender-neutral bathrooms on campus. Hageman made a very big step when they did that, and we want to look into potentially sitting down with construction management, sitting down and in the planning of that, and seeing if we can plan for the future to have it on campus. Obviously, funding is a big issue, so it will be a long-term goal.
All right, and we will move on to the next set of candidates.
Are we allowed to respond on that question?
Well, I'm asking you the same question, so you can do what you like. So I'll ask the question. I'll reiterate the question real quick for you guys. So, how do you plan to work with the new LGBT Center to improve UNI for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer students? And you have 1 minute.
It's a really exciting time on UNI's campus with this new LGBT Center. As a leader in the progressive community, I've been on record as being an ally in the LGBT community for several years now. Stuff like gender-neutral bathrooms and gender-neutral housing is stuff that we've worked on as a staff in Northern Iowa UNI for several years now. In terms of working with the new center, I know that they have a staff member and that there's several progressive organizations that work with the LGBT community. We hope to sit down and collaborate with them and see how we can serve their needs.
All right, wonderful. All right, and we will start with this next question with Corey and Eric. How has your experience as a student leader on campus prepared you to represent as a student to our legislators?
Well, I've actually gone to Des Moines since freshman year with Northern Iowa Student Government to talk to legislators about my experience at UNI and why UNI deserves more funding from the legislature. My experiences as Wright Hall President and the Residence Hall Association have also bolstered that, because without more funding from the legislature, the residence life goes down, student government goes down, all student organizations and students in general have their experience is lessened if there's not enough funding from the legislature. So my experiences, experiences in the past have ended with.
And Kevin and Paul, how has your experience as student leaders on campus prepared you to represent as a student to our legislators?
Definitely. Like I touched on earlier, I touched on a lot of my leadership experiences already, but working on several different executive boards, working with an executive board that chairs up ahead of several organizations. I have the different time management skills, I have the different organizational skills, and those are obviously important for any leader. But the main skill that I've developed with all of these groups is my ability to talk to individuals. I'm able to sit down with people and talk to them as the individual themselves, work with them as the individual, not with a certain title or position that they might have. And I've found that's really successful for me, being able to talk to you as an individual and work with you yourself. And so I think that when you go to legislature, go to branches like this, being able to sit down with that sort of perspective is key, and be able to sit down and talk to them in a different sort of perspective than what you might normally consider.
All right, and for our next question, we will start with Kevin and Paul. What would be your first approach towards promoting an inclusive and diverse campus?
One of the big things that we would want to do is expand upon the diversity awards that are already located here on campus. There's already a Diversity Matters award for students and faculty, and we would like to expand that into a student organization as well. We really want to promote student organizations going out, interacting with other students, learning what other student organizations are about, what they think. We want to build a general respect between each of those student organizations. So there would be a merit system that, the more organizations that you have an event with, maybe you host a multicultural event in the union together, you get merit or points based off of that. We'd also like to introduce and publicize the things like the diversity grant that not a lot of student orgs know about that's already offered here, and the NCBI workshops that are offered here. We want to really promote those to student organizations and make sure that they know they are available to their members.
All right, and Corey and Eric, what would be your first approach towards promoting an inclusive and diverse campus?
Right, and this sort of speaks to our experience as student leaders and collaborating with lots of student groups around the mess. This merit system that you talk about, it exists. It's in the NISG contingency funding guidelines. If you're an organization and you want to put together a big event, if you pair with another organization or even a third organization, you can request more money from NISG. And we think that's great. We want to encourage that. As a student leader, we've taken advantage of that constantly. We've put on some really awesome events as speakers on campus. When it comes to the Diversity Matters Fund, NISG has to do a better job of getting the message out there that these funds are available. It's always really hard, but we think that by working with the student org directly and giving them as much information, that they'll be successful.
All All right, and now we will move to questions from our live audience. I can figure out how to take out this microphone. Pull it.
Hi, my name is Cheyenne, and I'm with Fraternity and Sorority Life here on campus. And I guess we work a lot with NISG. We've been working in the past year or so, kind of building communication between NISG and Fraternity and Sorority Life on campus. Obviously, we're working to be bigger on the campus, and we're wondering what specifically are you working with Fraternity and Sorority Life on? What are you doing for us? How are we able to build connection? I know we're currently working on the budget. We're working with, we have a position, Director of Fraternity Life, Director of Sorority Life. We're working on having a poll and kind of who represents us in that. So I guess what is the things that you're specifically doing to work with us, to build that communication, to help us out?
Thank you for your question. You know, as people that are not in the Greek community, Eric and I recognize this deficiency, and it's our hope that in the time that we've been campaigning, we've met with several of the fraternities and sororities here. We've had some really good experiences, took some really cool questions, and it's our hope that moving forward that we can continue these relations, and then hopefully work with people like you, so that way we can figure out if there's something that needs to be easier for you or it's not clear, that we can meet with people like you and explain it to you. It should be as easy as possible. Fraternity and student life, or fraternity and sorority life, excuse me, it's a really awesome little community on campus. It's very active, and we should encourage that as much as possible.
Yeah, I think that as far as from a joint perspective of combining fraternity and sorority life and NISG, we need specific people with certain tasks in their specific, like the directors of fraternity and sorority life. We need to combine, take what fraternity and sorority life wants for those positions as well as what NISG wants. I know right now those spots are both open, so we need to make sure those spots are filled by people that NISG and FSL both want in place. I think that's a big first step there. As well, obviously you touched on expansion. Expansion is a big deal. As IFC president, I actually just met with Dr. Terry Hogan this past Friday to discuss expansion and got his approval there. So that's going in the right process. But I think the biggest thing of all, as far as when it comes to fraternity and sorority life, the best way to do it is from the top. If you have people who are educated and who are willing to work for fraternity and sorority life, that's going to be your best bet from there.
Thank you very much.
Hi.
How you doing?
Hi, my name's Dylan Keller. I'm a current senator for the College of Social and Behavioral Sciences. I kind of got two separate questions, if that's okay for each campaign. First, I would like to start with Kevin and Paul and ask, could you further define the one-stop shop and why it's necessary for students to have that on campus?
Yeah, thanks, Dylan. Obviously, this is a big part of our platform, and we were hoping we'd be asked about it. Our one-stop shop, the goal of that is to combine all the resources that new student organizations want in one location. Right now, you have to go to several different places in order to found yourself as a student organization, and we want to ease that process. But the biggest thing of all is that we want to make it easier for student organizations to fix any problems they might have. If they're having issues with possibly like a recruitment for the student organization, we want to find student organizations that are recruiting really well. We want to give them direction there and help to allow that sort of collaboration. That's a really big deal for us. But the biggest thing we want to do is check in on those student organizations. Once you become a student organization, there's no check-in process of how are you doing. So we want to stop in after a month and see, how are you doing? Is there anything we can help you with in trying to further the resources there?
Alrighty, and my question for Corey and Eric. You explained in your platform, and it's a big deal with your campaign, is this... Oh, I'm sorry.
Thanks, Dylan. When it comes to the one-stop shop, we really have a great resource here on campus in Pam upstairs. I mean, she's great. Half of her salary is paid through the NISG. She really is a great resource for student organizations. We want to do a better job of communicating these resources that are available to students. This goes back to the technical staff that we mentioned earlier. I mean, a lot of students, they don't want to walk all the way to the union, especially. Well, I guess the weather's nice today, but typically, you don't want to walk all the way to the union to try to get like a piece of information. You want to be able to find that on your phone, on your tablet, on your laptop. And that's why we think that going forward, making a website a viable and useful resource is really important.
And just quickly to add to that, something that's also nice is that every year, in order to stay a student org, you have to have a meeting with the director or the director of administration and finance. So that's a nice way to check up with student orgs as well. That is already in place.
All right. First, I guess, for in Eric's campaign, you know in your platform and your experience that experience is a really important structure to your campaign. And I was just was wondering if you could further expand how you achieved 7 years experience with Northern Iowa student government and why that is significant for your position.
Well, I guess what's important about the experience is not that we've done it, but what we've done while we've been in those positions. The 7 years of experience come from me having 4, getting started my freshman year, and now this being my senior year, being my 4th year. One thing that I'm really proud about this experience that I've accomplished recently is I know that earlier in the fall, Tom was having trouble finding funding for the Panther Shuttle, which is a really important resource for students, especially in the winter. And I was actually involved with Tom in these negotiations with apartment complexes to make sure that the funds for that were put together so that we could continue that program. So it's not so much about the time, it's about the stuff that we've been able to do in that time we think is really telling about our candidacy and what we want to get done as an administration. Dylan, could you repeat the question?
Well, the question was about how does your experience in NISG combine in 7 years, so I don't know if you would address that.
Well, obviously, we have no NISG experience. We're well aware of that. We cannot match the experiences that they have. We're not going to try to. But what we do have is those connections with student leaders across campus. Obviously, we keep touting that, and we have those abilities to make those connections happen. But we want to take from the resources. Obviously, our upper cabinet, if elected, we want to fill that with people who have, obviously, NISG experience. We're not going to put other people in our cabinet who don't have that experience. So we obviously want to take from the experiences that lots of senators, lots of people have within NISG, and we want to put that into our cabinet as well.
Hi. Hey, Paul. Alrighty. So first of all, I do want to take the time to commend you guys for working so hard on your platform and making sure that it wasn't just filled with a bunch of kind of filler phrases and words, if you will. I think that's something we've seen in the past, and it is kind of hard to keep your candidates responsible, to hold them accountable for all the things that they do plan on accomplishing. So, in your guys' opinions, what do you think might be the biggest flaw or item, or might be the least likely to fulfill in the other candidates or the other tickets platform?
Okay, I think a lot of what Corey and Eric are running on, they have very great ideas. They haven't really backed up a lot of those ideas. One of the big things that they talked about was increasing diversity by making it more known about the NCD workshops. And they were asked specifically about what they were going to do to increase that on campus. And they have no plan whatsoever to increase involvement in those. And that is something big that I think I took from their platform, that we haven't really seen anything that they have a plan for to increase involvement in those.
Well, when it comes to the NCUI workshop, we just thought that seeing as they already mentioned it and that it's already in our platform is something that didn't necessarily bear repeating. But I think one of the hardest things that will be for them is the idea of adding bike lanes, because when it comes to adding bike lanes, that's something that will take thousands of dollars either to add more cement or move paint, as well as whether or not it's even necessary. So that's what I think is going to be the hardest thing for them to accomplish. That's in the platform.
And real quick, NCBI is Campus Coalition Builders. They run great workshops on diversity. You can find their information online. It's a great program if you take the workshops and know what I'm talking about.
In the past, campaigns have made really big promises on improving communication to the student body. In the past, that's taken the form of web apps or mobile phone applications. I know both platforms have spoken about increasing communication with the student body. What will you be doing on the first day of your campaign in order to change the precedent of big promises left unfulfilled?
I guess we'll thanks, Eric. Stuff that we want to start addressing on the first day when it relates to communication is we really want to hit the ground running on the website. Right now there's a website under construction, and we're going to take whatever we have at that point and try to move forward so that way we can utilize the best skills of people that are already on campus and get them working on our NISG website. There's a current website put together by the Interactive Digital Studies Department that is fantastic. And we want to find out we want to get those students and we want to have them work for NISG and have them put together a good site. We think it's really critical to have an online presence. And we think that the best way to do it is to hire some really competent people and get a good looking site together. And we think that'll do a lot for the prestige of NISG.
That's a great question. Aaron, right? Something that the Town of Blake currently have, they do have money in the budget to work on the website. Obviously, we think that's important, and we agree that having a prominent web appearance, I guess, for lack of a better word, is important to us. Something we do want to touch on, though, with communication to student organizations as well. We want to create some sort of position under the Director of Administration and Finance that their job is to communicate with student organizations. We feel like by creating a position where that's their job, then we'll help to get it done because that's their job. So I feel like by allowing that to happen and be able to create a more sound structure, that's something that we can make a realistic goal.
You can go back to the Twitter questions later. Yeah.
All right, back to the social media questions. We'll start with Kevin and Paul. Have candidates acknowledge their running mates' weaknesses and differences in leadership style, and how will they address it?
As far as differences between the two, I think that we obviously have a more expansive approach as far as leadership goes in the United Student Body. Clearly they have more, like we said, they have more experience in student government. I think that the differences in leadership are key. I think that that's obviously something that is important to us. Can you repeat the question again? Let's get my time. I want to make sure I touch it.
Have candidates acknowledge their running mates' weaknesses and differences in leadership style? How will they address it?
We'll end it there.
And Corey and Eric, have candidates acknowledge their running mates' weaknesses and differences in leadership style, and how will they address it?
Can I get more time? Is that okay, Kaylee? Yeah.
Yep.
Is the question meant to be like acknowledging Paul's weaknesses, or is it their weaknesses? Can I get clarification on that?
Who tweeted this?
It's under 140 characters, my bad.
No, you're fine.
You two, and you need to, you and Paul, what are your differences, each other's weaknesses, Corey and Eric?
Okay. Paul and I have obviously different backgrounds, very different differences between the two of us. Coming from different colleges and different backgrounds as far as major, we have lots of different connections there. Being in the College of Business Education, I have a lot of connections with education majors that Paul doesn't have. And being in a school that focuses on business and education, education is obviously very important to us as well.
Kevin is very good for me in the sense that Kevin has an eye for detail, much more than even I do. He catches every little thing in a paper, in organization, time planning. He does all of that even better than I do. I wouldn't say that I'm completely weak at that, but he's very, very good at that. And it's something that is a good strength that he brings to me. So that's one of the big things that I noticed in Kevin, that he plays that well.
And Corey and Eric, have candidates acknowledge their running mates' weaknesses and differences in leadership style, and how will they address it?
Cool. Well, this man Eric Boyce right here, he's great. He's a detail-oriented guy. He's put together. He's got all the details, and that's what I need because I'm more of a big ideas person. I like to sit and brainstorm at the whiteboard and like see what we can do, and I have all these great ideas. But Eric has been really great for me in that he puts me like in the box of reality, and then make sure that we're not like double or triple scheduling meetings, and really keeps me down to earth, and that's what I really appreciate about Eric.
And I think our skills in different student orgs throughout UNI is also very, very different. He's had a lot of involvement in like LGBT communities, philosophy club, more like organizations that work directly with majors, where I've been really involved in residence life, working with students either as a Ryder Hall president or as an RA currently. So those also complement each other really well.
All right, and the next question will start with Corey and Eric. Do you support gender-neutral housing and restrooms on campus? How do you plan to work with the Board of Regents and the DOR to establish them?
To answer your first question, yes, we're in support of gender-neutral housing. We think it's really important for all UNI students to feel safe on campus, and part of that is like feeling safe when you go to the bathroom. You know, this is something that should be simple to do, but it gets a little sticky as you go up higher and up on the chain. I know that there are conversations going on right now in the DOR, and we want to strengthen those conversations. And once we get sort of our ducks in a row together as a university, I'd be happy to advocate on UNI's behalf to the Board of Regents. We think it's really important.
And Kevin and Paul, do you support gender-neutral housing and restrooms on campus? How do you plan to work with the Board of Regents and the DOR to establish them?
Yes, we do support that. We touched on this a little bit earlier in our diversity plan. We're going to take proactive planning steps to get that in the planning for future buildings, future renovations. And that's something that we really want to sit down and talk about and get that planning in place. It's obviously a long-term goal, but if we start that planning now, then we can start setting up that process for the future. One of the big things that we will have to do is voice our opinions to the DOR. The DOR will make that decision, not us. So we have to be an advocate for the voice of the students so that we're letting the DOR know what the students want. That's really our big push. That's what we have to do. We have to voice students' opinions to the DOR. And we want to make sure that we have enough students that are going to fill those communities. So we want to make sure that we do the research behind that before we go to the DOR and we present that to them. So that's kind of our thing.
All right, and we'll start with Kevin and Paul. College of Business Senator Tyler Moran would like to hear each campaign's plan to effectively use the contingency fund.
That is one of the big parts of our platform. When we get into office, we really want to review what the current committee is doing with that student service. We want to understand why they haven't utilized $210,000 that is there available that students are paying each semester. So we want to determine why the committee has made the current decisions that it's had. We want to go from there and see what money we can use to maybe go towards a thing like a 9 o'clock bus route for students. Things like that are going to cost a lot of money, but we do have money in the contingency fund. And we just want to address why that money hasn't been used in previous years.
All right, and Corey and Eric, College of Business Senator Tyler Moran would like to hear each campaign's plan to effectively use the contingency fund.
All right, I don't have any numbers memorized for you, Tyler. Is that going to be okay? Yeah. So we recognize that like all this money isn't being spent, and it's difficult to, because we feel like we should spend this money. We're collecting it from students. We should be giving it back to students every way that we can. As a member of the Pepsi Fund Committee, we had funds accrue over a couple of years that we didn't even know about. And when we found that out this year, Amber and I and the other members of the committee, we worked to reach out to different student organizations to try to make that money go as far as it could. So we focused on buying new storage facilities down in the Keyhole Room. And we took a little bit of that money and took it to the Saturday bus pilot route that Tom put together. And what you have to do is you have to recognize that it's a unique opportunity and you want to make that money count. So on one hand, you want to spend it like prudently, but we also want to make sure that we're spending it for students as much as possible. So I'll get things specific for you, Tyler. I'm sorry, but we're going to work with our cabinet to make sure that this money is communicated, that it's out there, and that we use it effectively.
All right, and Corey and Eric, in a normal week, how and where do you come into contact with your constituents? How do you reach out to students?
I've been contacting my constituents through NISG office hours, as well as through my classes, through my political science classes, being in the College of Social and Behavioral Sciences, as well as in the DOR, because within all the residence halls there are a lot. There are over 4,000 the students who live within the residence halls. So as an RA, I've been trying to get in contact with at least the residents that live in Shoal and seeing what they would like to be done within the student government and what I can do as a senator.
Yeah, I'd like to add that it's good for us to make ourselves available officially, but I also think it's important for us to make it so that we feel approachable to the average student, that we're going to on-campus events and athletic events, we're rubbing elbows with people that could share their concerns with us, because that's how you really hear what's going on at the ground level. You sort of meet with people and connect with them individually.
All right, and Kevin and Paul, in a normal week, how and where do you come into contact with your constituents? How do you reach out to students?
Definitely. Paul and I reach out to students a lot actually within our classes, but more importantly, we reach out to students in our offices of work. Paul works in the Office of Financial Aid, so he spends his hours a week advising students, working with them to see how they can best have their needs met. And I actually work in the Office of Career Services, so I'm consistently meeting up with students to go over resume critiques, mock interviews, to try and prepare them for the real world. And I often get lots of questions about career prep as well. So we come into contact a lot there in our offices in Gilchrist. We also obviously come in contact in student organizations and the events that they put on. But we also do have a strong presence in the different events on campus, whether it's musical events, drama events, athletic events. We try to make ourselves appear in those as much as possible. Through different student organizations that we're already in, we try and have a presence to support other members there. And then I still have strong connections on the north side of campus as a former RA there. So I spend a lot of time at dance with Member Campbell, relating to those students and talking with them and seeing how me as an upperclassman.
All right, and we are going to move on to the live audience questions.
Hi. This question is mostly for Kevin and Paul. If Corey and Eric want to respond to it afterwards, that's fine. So you talk a lot about how your leadership experience is more valuable than, or sets you aside in a different way than Corey and Eric's NISG experience. But a lot of things that you discussed here and in your platform are things that maybe resources that are already in place. And I agree that students are not aware of some of these resources. Like for instance, the one-stop shop, but like I said, that resource, some of those resources already exist in PAN and other things. And also, kind of the sub part of this question is that the Director of Administration, Erlmeyer, wanted to know where this $200,000 amount of money came from, because she's not aware of this money that hasn't been spent yet. So how do you plan to catch up to Corey and Eric, who already have this knowledge of NISG and the connections from day one when they would begin office?
Sure. So addressing the first part of your question about the connections and the fact that they had the NISG experience, obviously, like I said, we want to surround ourselves in our upper cabinet with people who have that experience. We think that's very important. But if we felt like we weren't in a position where we could make changes and catch up very quickly these next couple months before we take office, we wouldn't be running. Like I said, we talked to the previous administration, to the current administration, and they think it's that's 90%. Most of what you do, you can't really prepare for. And so if you can't prepare for something, you need to have that leadership experience so that way when things come up, you're able to back them.
That was a mistake on my part. That's from the budget. The student service fee, the $210,000 is from the budget of this upcoming year. I believe, I'm not sure on the exact number of how much money is actually covered right now, but that's for the upcoming budget for the next year.
Just a quick comment on the NISG budget. If I remember correctly, Director Olmeyer can correct me if I'm wrong, but out of the $200,000 that is in the total NISG budget, I think around $100,000 of that is NISG operations budget, and then $100,000 has been in the contingency fund, and I think out of the entire year we have about $15,000 left that has not been allocated. So that $85,000 that has been allocated, it's up to the student orgs to spend that money. After we've given it to them, it's up to them to spend it. So.
Thanks, Kenny.
Okay, I just want to clarify. I'm the Director of Administration and Finance for this year. Amber Erlmeyer is my name. Sorry, I didn't know where $210,000 came from. That's been unspent. There is $100,000 that goes into the NISG budgetary for every year that pays for the student by president salary, vice president, executive branch, many different events on campus. It's all available online if you want to look at those numbers. And there's $77,000 $100,000 that's allocated to student organizations throughout the year. This year there's $20,000 left that hasn't been allocated that student organizations apply for. So I just want to correct the numbers, make sure they're accurate. So.
Alright, hello everyone. My name is Blake Finley, and I hate talking about microphones. I also happen to be the current student body vice president, and my question for both of you guys is, realistically, you're probably not going to get everything done that you want to. Now, you may happen to get everything done on your platforms. If you are, you're a superhero, and teach me how to do it. But throughout the year, you're going to come up with a lot more ideas, some ideas that you might find to be better than the ones on your platform, and you're also going to have like unexpected things come up. Hopefully, we don't have a round of program cuts that you have to deal with. If you do, I feel really sorry for you. That's going to be stressful and bad for me. But I spend about 50 hours a week into the job, and my question is, how are you going to learn, like, develop priorities and make decisions? Because you're going to be a student, you're going to want to sleep, you're going to have to sleep, and just how are you going to do that?
I guess those who know me know that I have a pretty brutal sleep schedule. I push myself pretty hard when it comes to school. To what you're saying, Blake, about how stuff is going to come up during the school year, and recognizing that, that's why me and Eric think it's really critical that we're here over the summer, so that way we can get all of those things started, get those gears turning, so that way we're ready by the time August rolls around, that we're ready for whatever happens.
Definitely, I appreciate the question. Something that we both have focused on a lot, we do a lot with time management already. Like I said, with our significant involvements, I'm constantly using my Google Calendar to plan out each meeting where I need to be. If it wasn't for Google Calendar, I don't know where I'd be. As far as planning out what we're going to accomplish within our platform, I think it's really important to focus immediately on the short-term things, the things that you can get done while always putting time into those long-term things. Your long-term goals, there are going to be goals that we're going to have that won't be able to be accomplished within our terms. We realize that. But what we do is we want to spend the time so that way the next administration following us would be able to take from what we've done and keep going. Obviously, with what you and Tom have done, we're going to have to do the same with you guys. We want to keep that flowing. We don't want to have a halty transition. We want to just keep the transition seamless, and we want to do that for our next administration after us.
Hi, I'm Wes Jones. I'm the NISG Director of Residence Operations.
You talk in the mic.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Wes Jones, current NISG Director of Residence Operations. I just wanted to ask, what do you guys think is the best thing that NISG has done this past year? And I want to make an exception. You can't talk about the Panther shuttle route because it hasn't actually happened yet. So I'm going to exclude that, but everything else is very good.
I think one of the best things that they've done is try to utilize the top of the union. I know that's one of the big things Tom and Blake ran on. And they are already working on that. I know I saw when we met with Tom today, he was out there measuring the bricks. I think that's one of the best things that they can do. That is a very underutilized place on campus. And I think it's a great resource for students, and just another great place for students to use on campus. So that's something that I think we would expect.
Well, to answer your question, Wes, I can't talk about those things. Being election commissioner last year actually barred me from having an official position this year. It's part of your job to try to stay out of the system and hopefully run a good election. So on that end, I'm going to hand over to Eric because he was saying this.
Hopefully I don't sound a little biased when I say this, but I really like some of the resolutions that were passed during the Senate this year, including the Violent Incidents Defense Strategies training for all administrators and faculty. As an RA, we had to take that training, active shooter training, and I think it was really important information to just to be prepared. We don't want anything obviously to happen, but it's nice to have that knowledge and have that training. And it's kind of scary if you ask some of the professors about what to do. They don't really know, so I think they should take some of that training.
Hey guys, how's it going? Hey, my name is Connor Braithwaite. I'm the Director of Academic Affairs for Student Government. My question is, if you were elected, how are you going to improve promote the educational quality of all students here on campus, not just traditional students, but non-traditional students, students off campus, and international students?
Well, one thing that I think is really important about all of our time here is our time spent in our liberal arts and work classes. If you guys read the Northern Iowan, I wrote an opinion piece about that last semester. And the way to really enrich the experience of all the students here is to really advocate the value of those classes. I think that that's something that we can do right away. I think that it's often a shame that a lot of people kind of blow off those classes. But I think down the line, a lot of people that I've talked to, alumni, have said, man, they really appreciate all the classes that they had to take at the time. And I think that that's something that can enrich all students if we can just sort of like communicate the importance of things like the LAC.
I think one of the big things that we can do is make the academic advising options that students do have more out there. A lot of students don't know that they have advisors waiting for them to come and ask questions. I know when I switched my major, I didn't even know who I was going to talk to. We need to make sure that students know that that resource is there for them. We also need to make sure that they know which, where that's located. That's very confusing sometimes. You don't know which college you're located in. Not a lot of incoming students know that. One of the big things that Blake has been working on is when international students get here, he helps them kind of get a host family, get oriented to campus, and that's something that I'd like to continue as well. International students come to campus and they kind of are like, what am I doing? We need to make sure that they know where those resources are, that there's people that are there connecting them to those resources on campus.
Hi guys, my name is Alyssa Trisak. I'm the Director of Public Relations, and I have a question for both of you guys. So how would, I know that you guys are working on the PR position for next year as you're going to be hiring more people and that sort of thing. How would you specifically make sure that students feel that you are an approachable body and that you are communicating clearly and getting your message out there as to what you're doing?
Thank you, Alyssa. Obviously, we want to communicate with student organizations. That's our big thing that we keep hitting on. But it's true. We want to be able to make sure that there is constant communication there and active communication so we know what they want. But we've also talked about on a national sort of level, seeing what opportunities are out there for UNI students and being able to take those opportunities and directing them back to the students that can impact. We've talked a lot, or there's a point in our platform about just making UNI more well-known, I guess at the state, national level, things like that. So by finding ways for UNI students to connect to those sorts of opportunities, that's from a public relations standpoint, it's a big deal to us.
And I think we just want to come across that we're very approachable. That we are here to, represent you. And if you have specific ideas or things that you don't think are going right, you need to be able to approach us. If you see us walking in class, stop us and tell us. That's what we want. And we don't need a PR position specifically to do that, but we want all of NISG to be that way. We want our executive cabinet to be that way, and especially Kevin and I to be very approachable. And students to know that they can come up to us with their ideas and what they think is going on.
Two things that I would like to say. One that we've said in our platform, and we've said over and over again, is being here over the summer so we can talk at orientation. Because that's when a lot of students get a really good first impression of the school. Myself, for example, I went on a tour before I came to UNI, but orientation was the first real experience I had here. So having a specific time where Corey and myself could talk to the students at orientation, be it for freshman or transfer, allowing them to kind of understand what NISG does, and just the information in general helps them get a better knowledge of what we do and how to, it helps improve that relations.
As a veteran of several student organizational fairs over the summer, meeting with students every Tuesday and Friday afternoon for 3 or 4 hours, meeting at tables, I recognize that a lot of freshmen are ready to sort of get involved in student organizations and get a lot of information. And we think it's a travesty that there's no student organizational fair and transfer orientation, so that's something that we want to work on right away. Because we think that those students are ready to get involved.
Hi, my name is John Gola. Like most people ask questions, I also don't have any NISG experience. But my question is, what are you going to do to help get rid of the little brother mentality that you and I have to the other state schools?
Well, thank you. That's a really good question because that's something that's been plaguing you and I for years and years. And to be honest, we can talk with legislators as much as possible, but in a 1-year time frame, there's not much that we can do. The most that we can do is just continue to talk to legislators, days like UNI Day at the Capitol, Regents Day at the Capitol, letting them know how important UNI is to the state of Iowa, letting them know that I think around 90% of students who graduate from Iowa get jobs in Iowa, just showing them how important those numbers, like how important UNI is to the state. That's about as much as we can do.
And continue to beat Iowa State in wrestling.
Great question, John. Obviously, as someone on student missions ambassadors, I think that's important that, and in our tours we discuss how we are different from Iowa and Iowa State. We're not trying to be Iowa and Iowa State. We are a middle-sized university. And something that sets us apart that we really want to go after the legislature with is that 92% of UNI students are from the state of Iowa. So that's something that we can really sell. As far as when it comes to trying to increase funding, that's the point we need to continually keep pushing. Because if we're going to get the funding that Iowa and Iowa State are getting, we need to make sure that they realize the importance of that.
All right, this is going to be our last question from the audience for social media tonight, but don't be afraid to continue to ask the candidates questions throughout the remaining week. So.
Hello again. Okay, so I want to touch on you guys talking about approachability and saying how approachable all four of you guys, and I can agree with that. You're very easy to approach, but given our audience and our past transactions in government, I personally disagree with that. Now, say what you will, but levels of appeal will start to go down with underrepresented organizations, given the main fact that you guys are four cis white males running for student government. So, my honest question for you, and given UNI's demographics, so think realistically here, don't throw out some bogus answer. What does diversity and inclusivity mean to you, and how do you honestly plan on going forward with that with the current university's initiatives?
Diversity to us obviously doesn't just relate to whether it's race, gender, sex, something like that. I think that a lot of what diversity also relates to is people's interests. So we talked about that with our student groups, trying to get student groups to communicate with each other, have events with each other, because even from a standpoint of like fraternity sorority life, my chapter is very different from other chapters. And so even though we may be in the same sort of realm of student organization, we're very different. So from a diverse standpoint, we realize that every student organization, every student is involved in different things. I think that it's important that we aren't all the same person. I think that's obviously an important thing. If we were all the exact same background, if we were all have the exact same thoughts, it wouldn't be very interesting university. And so, I don't remember the rest of your question, but I know I've touched on part of it, and we don't have much time. Good question, though. Thank you.
I think I remember the question. No, I think I got it. Lisa, you give a really important question, because as four white, straight males sitting up here, it's hard for us to pretend like we have perspective in these underrepresented communities, like you mentioned. And we have to recognize that diversity has a lot of different faces, because I bet the four of us are pretty different individual people. There's a lot of different ways that people can be diverse. But when it comes to what we want to do as an administration is we want to recognize and value the communities that exist. And we want to meet with them and work with them to see what they want from their perspective. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to come top down and sort of lay down the diversity cover to somebody. We need to work with them in their communities to see what they need and how we can help them. So, thanks, Alicia.
All right, and now we will move on to closing statements from each of the tickets. They have 3 minutes to give their closing statement, and we will start with Corey and Eric.
I've enjoyed this. This has been a lot of fun to actually get to talk with Kevin and Paul and hear more than just their platform. I hope it was the same. These were some really good questions on all facets of student life, and I really hope it gave you guys a better perspective on Corey and myself coming into the election, which starts next week.
I'd like to echo Eric's comments about thanking everybody coming out tonight. I know that people probably have midterms coming up. I know that I do next week. That student time is precious, so I do appreciate you guys, getting involved on campus, staying informed about elections, and like Michael Kelly mentioned earlier, running for uncontested seats is something that you guys should definitely look into. You only need 5 people to write you in to win a seat. That's the minimum, so if you and a couple friends want to get together and run, that'd be great. When it comes to sort of looking at this debate, it's been really fun, and we hope that Eric and I, sitting up here next to Kevin and Paul, you guys have gotten what I think is an honest picture of who we are and what we do, And they have a track record in Greek life and in SAA that I think is really cool, and they're both really nice guys, great representatives of the university. And they're upstanding, upstanding gentlemen, and I think that Eric and I have presented our vision of ourselves, and that's, we're trying to work with you guys. We've run the ropes, I've been doing this since my freshman year. I know what it's like how to look at this from, the beginning as a freshman, just started getting involved, and now on the back end. And we're hoping that we've demonstrated to you that our experience, our record of getting things done, will convince you to vote for us a week from today. And we think that it's a clear choice, and we'll see you next week.
I just want to start off by thanking the Election Commission for all the work that they've done to put this on. It was a really successful forum, and I hope you guys, like they said, got to know us a little bit better, what we're about, who we are. That's really the point of this, for you guys to know who we are and who's going to be representing you. I grew up in Pella, small town in Southern Iowa. When I came to UNI, I was afraid I was going to be lost in the sea of faces. But what I found was that I got involved and I had a second family here. If I named everything that UNI has done for me, and if Kevin named everything that UNI has done for me, we would be here for hours. We have gained a lot, personally and professionally, and we can't thank UNI enough. We can never repay UNI for what we've gained, but what we can do is strive to make the experiences that you have as students and the opportunities that you have available. We want to make sure that students have all the opportunities that Kevin and I have had. Every student group across campus has that ability to do that. That is why Kevin and I are running for student body president and vice president. By allocating student funds effectively and establishing a one-stop shop for student organizations, highlighting diversity education and training, Kevin and I will further those opportunities for every student here at UNI. Kevin and I ask that you not only vote for us next week, but you show your support for us over the next year. And I really ask that if you guys have questions about our campaign, about our platform, what we're running on, that you do approach us in the next week. That's why we're here for you. We're here to be representatives for you. And I thank you very much for coming out.
Now you've heard them. So polls open Tuesday, February 25th at 7 a.m. and the polls close at 7 p.m. on Wednesday, February 26th. And how to vote: first you log onto My Universe, then click on the Live at UNI tab. Life, got it. And then lastly, vote in the voting and surveys bot for president and vice president and for the senators. And I'd like to thank you all for coming. I'm sure the candidates would love to still answer any of your questions afterwards if you have any. They all have Facebook pages, so feel free to contact them through there if your question hasn't been asked. And don't forget to vote. All right, thank you.